Um, Thanks for joining OIS today. We know that you probably have quite a few questions for us with everything that's been going on. We want to assure you that even though OIS is completely remote, along with most of the rest of you, we are continuing to process paperwork as we normally would. Brianna, Cynthia, and Katie are working very hard on your behalves. And we want to take today to just answer whatever questions, some of the questions we've already heard and what you might have. So we do want to remind you to keep your own video and audio muted. If possible, we're going to be taking questions through the chat feature, which you can find on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. So I'm Delo Blau. I'm the director of OIS. I am joined, as you can see, by Sarah Jones, who's the associate director, and I know many of you have worked with her in the past. Then we have Brianna Allen, who is the assistant director of the employment team, and she's doing, has been for the last several months, doing the bulk of the work for H1Bs and also Js. And we have Maria Cynthia Benitez Nunez with us. She's a new staff member. We're thrilled to have her. Cynthia is going to be working with Brianna for a while. She's going to be doing largely H1Bs, so you'll be talking with her when you do those. And then we have Katie Gongaware, who most of you have worked with. She'll be continuing to work with the Jays and on the coordination of the program overall. So what we're going to be doing is answering some of the questions that, like I said, we've already gotten from you. If you would continue to write questions in the chat, Katie and Cynthia will be keeping track of those, and at the end of our questions that we already have written down, they'll be providing us more and we can continue going with that. So let's just get started. We are focusing our questions today on the employment side of things. So we're focusing on H1B and on J. We do have FAQs for students out there. Hopefully you've seen that. I think it was sent out to you in an email. And we also have posted it on the emergency.pitt.edu /COVID-19 website, so you can find it there. Again, if you have questions today about students, we'd be happy to entertain them, but we want to focus on H1Bs and Js. So let's start out. First of all, with some general questions, and I'm going to suggest that Brianna take these questions. So, Brianna, in general, how will the remote process work for OIS?
Largely, it'll be the same as it's always been. We still require the electronic H1B or J1 request to come through my OIS, so that remains the same. The big difference being how to get your documents to us. But we'll go over that in a second. I will be your point of contact for all H1B cases and initial J1 cases. If you have a cancellation, an extension, or a late arrival, Katie Gongaware will actually be your contact for that, but feel free to reach out to either of us in that case. We're more than happy to help.
Okay, so where should the department mail any original items that OIS needs?
Okay, good question. We have a P.O. box. The P.O. box is number 267, Greenville, PA 16125. That will come to me directly, and I check that pretty much daily. So anything you have, just send it over to us. Also, it would be appreciated if you could send me an email to let me know that things are coming my way. That way I can keep track and make sure I receive everything.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, could you please repeat that? Someone is making noise at their desk and it overrode the P.O. box.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me say this, that these questions and answers will also be posted, so you'll get sort of a transcript of what we've said. But the P.O. box is 267 Greenville, PA 16125. And again, if you could all mute your audio, that would be great. Brianna, back to you. How should check requests be handled?
I'm sorry?
How should check requests be handled?
Okay. Generally the same way that you've always been doing it, just go through payment processing. We've spoken with them and they said that they'll forward all Department of Homeland Security checks to us. But if you do have any in hand, again, just send it to that PO box. And I've definitely received FedEx through that box, but we'll work on getting an address for that if it, should not work for any reason.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to some questions related to J scholars in particular, and I've asked Sarah to handle these. So as you all know, all initial J1 scholars have been postponed until at least June 1st. And obviously the university will continue monitoring the situation and we might extend that time frame if necessary. So Sarah, first question, why was June 1st selected as the postponed start date?
So because we don't know how long these travel restrictions will be in place, the Provost's office took their cues from the Department of State. And the Department of State has stopped all of their J1 programs that they financially sponsor for a period of 2 months. And they're asking us to do the same. So June 1st really does seem to be the earliest date that we might be able to see people traveling. As Dila said, we're going to continue to monitor everything, and if we have to extend that, we will extend that out.
So can you explain the difference between a late arrival and a cancellation, and how shall the departments decide which one of those two options to take?
Mm-hmm. So with a late arrival, we're simply moving and postponing the start date on the DS 2019. So the scholar continues to hold his or her document and the SEVIS record is open. There's no additional fees that need to be paid. And presuming the visa stamp itself is still valid in the future, they will use that same visa. A cancellation is when we cancel out the entire record and everything shuts down and we'd have to do everything over again. So if the scholar is able to come back to Pitt at a later time, after we've canceled it, we would have to make a new record and they would have to pay the new SEVIS fee. So when trying to make this decision, the department and the scholar should first determine if it's feasible for the program to start late. Sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes that makes the program, the program wouldn't run if you started too late. So if that answer is not clear, our recommendation is to just do a late arrival now, and then we can decide to cancel it later if we need to.
Okay. Is it possible for a J1 scholar to transfer into or out of Pitt during this time period?
Yes, so what we're talking about here is transferring in and out to a different institution within the United States, and there's no problem with transferring scholars to a different institution or them coming to us, as long as they otherwise qualify for the transfer, meaning they haven't run out of J time.
Okay. If they're currently in the U.S. in a different status, could the scholar change to a J1 status?
It's possible, and we can look at that if we need to. That's theoretically possible, but they would not be able to begin working in J status until the request has been approved, and that could take several months. But we will look at every possibility we can for all of these situations.
Okay. If a scholar is currently, these questions, the next couple of questions are going to be for Brianna, sorry. Brianna, if a scholar is currently out of the country, but his or her program has not yet ended, what should we do? So basically we're asking if they're stuck out of the country and can't come back in immediately to continue with their program, what should the department do?
The Department of State confirmed that we can extend programs of scholars if they're outside of the country and cannot return due to COVID-19. So if the scholar is able to perform any or all of the requirements while they're out of the country, we ask the departments to please work with them to the extent possible. Because, we'll try our best, but that's all we can do.
Okay. We have a scholar whose status is ending in the next month, but they're unable to travel back home. Is there anything we can do to help that scholar?
I would suggest reaching out to us because if they have available time left in their J1 Scholar program, we would definitely advise to extend if possible. So what you would do in that case is to submit an extension request to us via my OIS. That's probably the easiest way.
Okay. So we have a scholar who was planning to transfer to a new institution, but now the new institution has canceled the transfer. Is there anything we can do to help them?
If there's any way for people to continue working here for the time being, and the department will allow that, again, request an extension.
Okay. Last question on the scholar side. Our J1 scholar is currently working from home. Will that affect his or her program status?
I've actually gotten a lot of questions about this. The Department of State indicates that they're being a little more flexible based on COVID-19. So they understand that people may have to adjust their work environments and work remotely. So departments should continue to work with scholars to the extent possible remotely. And state guidance indicates that current exchange visitors may continue in programs that, as intended, fully comply with the regulations. So as long as they're continuing what they were doing, it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. We're going to jump now to some H1B questions, and these first couple of questions are going to be for Sarah again. Sarah, how long will it take for an H1B, and I'm sorry, let me back up. We informed you all that premium processing as of Friday was canceled from USCIS, so premium processing is no longer a possibility. So, Sarah, how long will it take for an H1B petition to be processed without premium processing?
So historically, regular processing of H1Bs has taken anywhere between 2 and 8 months. It really jumps around. And given our circumstances right now, I think we can expect processing times to be at the high end of that range or to even increase, unfortunately. We can hope that premium processing will resume at some point. If it is reinstated, we can go ahead and request it for any petitions that are still pending.
Okay. We have an H1B whose current status is ending and they need an extension. How might premium processing suspension affect that issue?
Any H1B extension must be filed prior to the end date on the current H1B. And if the petition is timely filed, that employee can continue to work for up to 240 days beyond the end date of their current status. So it'll just be really important to get these things timely filed, and then they're good for several months thereafter.
Okay. So what about if we have a current faculty member who's on an H1B that is going to need an extension, but they also need to travel outside the country, let's say in the fall, for a conference? Assuming that the travel bans are listed and they would be able to travel to the conference, how might the lack of premium processing affect that travel?
So that's going to be where it is affected. So an H1B holder is not going to be able to re-enter the U.S. until their new H1B petition has been approved. So we're hopeful first that the travel bans are lifted. But then we're going to need that premium processing to be reinstated before people start traveling in order to get back.
Okay. How about if a department has just hired someone in a different immigration status? So they're currently in a different immigration status and they need to switch to an H1B. How might the premium processing suspension affect that person?
A person doing a change of status cannot begin working in that new status until the H1B is approved. So that's where OIS is going to explore any other option that we have to be able to get that person to start working. If there are no other options available, the employment is going to have to be delayed until that H1B can be approved.
Okay. One more H1B question. our H1B employee is now working from home, will this cause a problem with maintaining their status, and do we need to file an amendment?
As long as that employee is able to complete his or her normal duties for work and they're able to maintain that employee-employer relationship with PIT, we don't think there's going to be any problems with that.
Okay. Back to a couple of questions for Brianna, and then we'll start handling some questions that we're getting from chat. Again, if those of you who are listening have any other questions, please do post them on the chat server. Questions for Brianna. We all know that right now university travel has been suspended. I'm actually answering the question rather than asking it. So let me ask the question to Brianna. Am I able to travel if I have a conference or something like that?
Well, because university travel has been suspended, we highly discourage people from traveling, abroad or anything, because we just don't know how things are going to pan out or when or if they'll be able to return. We always suggest checking the emergency.pit.edu/COVID-19 website for latest developments. But at this time, PIT will not sponsor any business travel.
So if a department has an employee who indicates that their visa is expiring while they're here in the country, what does the department or that employee need to do?
Okay. So in this situation, I think we're referring to a visa stamp and a passport. And the thing about a visa stamp is it's like a ticket to entry into the United States, but it doesn't actually indicate the length of your status. That actually comes from a valid DS-2019 or an approved H1B or something like that. So as long as you have a valid H1B or a valid J1 document, you're free to stay here even if your visa stamp expires. Just know that the next time you travel, if you do have an expired stamp, you'll need to apply for a new one before you can re-enter. That being said, that's another reason that we're sort of discouraging travel, because a lot of worldwide consulates and embassies are closed or have limited services. So again, we can't guarantee someone will be able to get a new visa stamp to re-enter.
Okay. I know that this question has come up quite a bit in the past month or two. I don't know how much it will come up in the next month or two, since we do have such large bans on travel, but can you give any advice to a department with dealing with a 14-day isolation period for new scholars or employees coming in from places where that is warranted?
Okay. Well, we assume that new scholars and employees will no longer be arriving from outside the United States, or if so, in a very limited number of people will be. Should that be the case for anybody, again, check that emergency.pit.edu website for updated information and things like that. If you are dealing with somebody who is here in the U.S. about to start their position, there's a couple of things we can do. The fortunate thing is, for a J1 program, they have 30 days that they can enter the United States before their program begins, and they can do that isolation period during that time. Also, H1Bs, let's say, their start date on their H1B is today, for instance. They don't actually have to present today. They can do their 14-day isolation period and then report to work, as long as they don't start working before today. So that's usually not an issue. I know some people have been dealing with their free 10 days of sick time that they've been given and using that for their isolation period, or doing lots of other creative things. That's mostly the department's decision, or something you can ask HR about. But there are options. As far as the visa is concerned, it shouldn't be an issue to do that 14-day isolation period.
Okay, thanks. So we're at the end of the questions that we had gathered ahead of time. I see that there are some chat questions here. Katie or Cynthia, would you be able to read off a first question for one of us to answer?
Yes, sure. So Lola Thompson is asking, so you can UPS or FedEx to a PO box Is it possible to provide an address for that?
Oh, yes. Okay. So actually, Lois Hilty down toward the bottom of the chat actually said if you put in 55 Clinton Street, P.O. Box 267, Greenville, PA, 16125, that should work for UPS or FedEx. Like I said, I received a FedEx recently successfully, but I haven't seen any UPS come in yet. So if you try that, that should work. If you are concerned, you can send it to our same 708 William Pitt Union address. Oh, I'm sorry. Lois just said don't use PO, just use box. So, but if you are concerned, you can always send it to our regular office address. We are doing mail pickup, and our office manager will forward it to me.
So Jenny is asking regarding the H1B processing times for new faculty recruits outside of the US for the purpose of estimating their new start date at Pitt. Should we assume the maximum amount of OIS processing time, example 11 months, before a decision is issued?
It's so
Okay,
hard
so
to say right now what we can expect. What I am hoping, against all hope, is that eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later, the premium processing will resume again. But assuming it doesn't right away, then the longer processing time is going to make sense. Yeah, if they're out of the country. Remember also that we're dealing with so many travel bans coming in, and we don't know how many more might be coming, that's also an issue to think about when you're dealing with somebody out of the country. But I think a longer processing time assumption is a more realistic assumption than a shorter processing time. Brianna, would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. The only thing I would add is that we are only able to file H1B petitions up to 6 months in advance.
Good point.
So, I wouldn't suggest anything past the end of September at this point, but just keep that 6-month time frame in mind. Other than that, if you did want to submit an H1B request 6 months in advance, go for it, because I think that's a wise decision.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So Lola Thompson is asking regarding the mail address. You mentioned that you have received FedEx packets through the PO address. Have you received any UPS?
Not yet. Hopefully I will, but yeah, like I said, if you have any issues with that, just send it to our 708 William Pitt Union address, because I'll definitely get it that way.
So,
okay, I'm seeing a question here that Adrian Stark has. We have a GSR that will switch to OPT as a volunteer. Should I still change her ER to visiting scholar or let it ride out for now? Brianna, do you want to take that now, or do you want to talk with Adrian about that specific case?
Adrian, I'll get in contact with you because I need more background information about the position and the person. So, yeah, I'll make a note and I'll email you after this, okay?
so Mary Ann Brown is asking, payment processing is no longer allowing us to pick up checks. How do we handle checks to go with visa requests? We have someone changing from a J1 to an H1. In the past, we have been told to include the check with all of their paperwork and not to send directly to the UCs.
So we have worked out with the payment processing office that they will be holding any check that any department requests going to USCIS or to Department of Homeland Security will instead be sent to the OIS box. So we will be getting those checks directly. You will not be sending them in with your packet, but we will be getting them directly from payment processing.
Okay, we have a question from Natalie Bright. She says, I have an international graduate student who went on leave and is looking to come back for summer term. Are international graduate students going with the same potential date of return, June 1st for now? Can they continue working on a new I-20 form?
Sarah, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, so we're not really using the same guidelines for the students. I mean, right now, students are not going to be coming back for the summer based on what we know. So for this particular student, I think what would be best is if the student really should be getting in touch with their immigration specialist in OIS, and we will figure out when we can get them back and what they'll be able to do when they get back. I don't know how far into this program this person is, their graduate program, but no, we're not anticipating that students are coming back in the summertime as of yet.
I see another question here about the checks, so I'm going to take that one. Janine is asking for Homeland Security checks. Do we have to note in the check request the name and address of the OIS immigration specialist? You're not supposed to have to do that. They have told us that when they get a check made payable to USCIS or Department of Homeland Security, they will automatically forward it to us. Having said that, it's probably not a bad idea for you to just slip a note saying, please send to OIS, just to kind of as a reminder, since this is all new for all of us. But you're not supposed to have to. They've said that they would forward all of them.
I can jump in here and answer Bill McShane's question. Bill, you're asking about J1 students that have just decided to go and finish up at home. No, there's no real documentation right now. I don't really want students doing a departure notification unless they're like terminating their relationship with the university just yet, which is not what they're doing just yet. I mean, we will be sending communications out to all of our students to try and figure out, did they end up leaving? Do they need to come back? All of that. So if a student, especially an exchange student who's going to be done soon, they can just leave and do what they need to do to finish up the program, and we'll kind of tie things up later.
Okay. Brianna, I'm going to ask you this one from Jeanette McDew. I have a J1 scholar who's received a waiver and will need to submit an H1B petition. However, she will be out of status as of June 1st. She'll receive an offer letter from our department effective April 1st, which does not give us enough time. Read the H1B application submission, since I usually submit to OIS 6 months prior to start date. Again, I'm going to ask you, Brianna, do you want to try and answer this question now, or do you want to talk with Jeanette privately about this?
I'll take a stab at it now, because this might be useful for other people to know. Okay. This is actually not the only case that we have similar issues with. Here are the important things to keep in mind. As long as we file for that H1B petition before the end of their current status, they're fine to stay here. That pending case holds them in status. However, they can't work between the end of their J1 program and when the H1B is approved. So we need to have that H1B approval in hand. This is helpful for cases with people who can't leave, who can't travel, and hopefully H1B processing will remain steady. As of right now, the USCIS website says typical processing times are 2 to 4 months. I wouldn't put much stock in that because a lot of people are having similar issues, and I think that timeline will increase. But I would suggest... Is someone trying to jump in?
No.
Okay, I would suggest trying to get those petitions to us as soon as possible, because the sooner we can get them filed, hopefully the sooner we'll get them approved. As far as what can they do in the interim while waiting for their H1B to be approved, that's something you may have to ask HR about. There might be approved types of leave they can use, or they might be able to exhaust vacation time or something. That's not really my purview, but that's something you could work out with HR.
Okay, that's the last of the questions I'm seeing. Katie and Cynthia, do you see any more that I've missed?
No. Nope. That's
okay. Okay, we're having a wait. How about an H1B extension? Can they work in between the processing of the extension to the receipt of the approval notice? They can actually work for 240 days, if as long as we get that extension filed prior to the end of their current H1B. Then they can work for 240 days beyond the expiration of that H1B, and hopefully in that 240 days the approval will come through. So extensions are not as difficult, or they don't have as much, there's not as much of an effect on them for this premium processing as long as they don't travel outside the country. They can continue working for the 240 days. All right, I think we're waiting on Amanda to ask another question. Here we go. So, okay, so you're asking about foreign students that have been accepted into your program for the fall and what you should do with them. The best I can say is that you process them as you normally would, and we hope that by the fall things will be more sane than they are right now. And we hope that by the fall they will be permitted to come back into the country, that travel bans will be lifted. I have to assume with the number of cases that are now in the U.S. and the way they seem to be falling off in China that that might be the case, but honestly, we just cannot say. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen, but my recommendation for everyone is to hold steady as much as possible. Keep on assuming that they will come for the fall, and then we'll have to play it by ear, and I'm sorry we don't have a better answer than that.
And Amanda,
Okay, now questions are coming in.
Our normal deadline, Amanda, for fall admits is June 15th. So we would hope that that one student who needs to get his documents can get them in by June. Well, you can get everything to us by June.
I see there's a question here about a drop box for petitions at a physical address, like if you would want to carry your petition somewhere and drop it off. Sarah, do you know where we are picking up mail from on-campus mail?
All the mail is being picked up at Thomas Boulevard, which is, I think, the main pit mailroom. So they're not even going to the Union anymore. So we don't really have like a drop box. I think that just things have to go through the normal pit mail system, and then we can go get them at their main facility. I hope that helps.
And I think you already answered Amanda's question about documents being turned in. So Tracy's asking a question about a student whose visa expires April 20th. She's set to graduate in May. The Canadian government wants all residents to return. What happens if she cannot return before April 30th?
I think that question might need to go to Jean Wenner specifically, because first of all, if the program isn't over until May, then we need to look at the length of that program. I would recommend Tracy and Christine to email Jean Wenner. I think it's jeanwenner@pitt.edu is her email, to ask about these students. Because you're right, if they leave now, they may not be able to get back in to complete clinicals.
Okay, any other questions? If you want to ask a question but don't quite have it typed, just say wait or something so we know not to end this webinar. If I don't see anything in the next couple of minutes, we're going to say goodbye. All right, I'm not seeing anything. Thanks so much for joining us. If you do have a question, please reach out. Like I said, Brianna's going to be your main contact for employment-based issues, Katie, of course, for some J1 questions, and the immigration specialist on the student team for your student questions. If you don't know who that is, feel free to reach out to any of us or write to ois.pitt.edu, and they'll get it to the right. We'll get it to the right person to process. Thanks so much. Stay safe, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you in person again soon. Bye.